I was surprised at the blowback from people. There was a fair amount of negativity to it out of the gate, and it was because it felt like everybody loves Geno because he's not Russell. You got to bring him back. He's great. He had a great year. He's the answer. And then when the numbers came out, we got a lot of texts of people going, "No, that's no good," or "This is too much," or he's mediocre. Blah blah blah. I was just a little surprised at some of that, but. If you're one of the people that felt that way, I would imagine seeing the breakdown would make you feel a little bit better because the way it goes, this is according to Mike Garafolo, base value is 3 years, $75 million. So that's a $25 million a year average. He does get a $40 million fully guaranteed at signing, which is big, and then $28 million in the first year, up to $30 million more in incentives in total throughout the life of the contract, not the first year. So it's not what it looked like on the surface without all the details. So the average annual value is $25 million. Now he can make a lot of money in incentives. We don't know what those are yet. We haven't seen what he needs to do to, what dollar amount is attached to each achievement, or if it's individual achievements, if it's team achievements. I'm sure it's probably a mixture of both.
Yeah, and I think we talked a little bit about this yesterday, that does this clear the way for them to now get on with building the rest of their team? And how do you feel about the amount of money you paid Geno? I mean, it was just like we talked about yesterday with our good buddy, the late, great John Clayton would say, the professor would tell you, wait and see what the details are. So now you see the details of basically it's a 3-year, $25 million deal at its base. Now, the guarantees, and you brought this up yesterday, that's the one thing that is the most important.
Yeah.
The guarantees.
Yeah, that's they dress it up with, we've seen huge deals, $150 million over the two things always seem to be true. Not always, but for the most part. They rarely see the end of that deal. They rarely collect every penny of it because either they move on or they restructure. That's the big thing. I mean, you see it not just quarterbacks. You see anybody signs a huge deal. It's huge. It's flashy. It's a headline grabber. And then invariably, I'm already hearing about, Cleveland. They're trying to get Deshaun Watson to restructure his deal. They have to do it because they can't manage the dollar value that's hitting the cap every year. So he just signed that deal. And we were all just going, oh, my goodness, look at this amount of money he's making. They're already going to restructure that deal. So I'm not saying that's what happens here, but that's part of what seems to happen when we get these big flashy numbers.
Yeah.
It's not often true that, they're going to play 4 years or 3 years and they're going to make every dollar of that.
Yeah, and I'm curious how people think. I know that Bump and Stacy was listening on the way in. They had some callers, how do you feel about this and everything. Now that it's broken down in that way, now this isn't the entire story. Just like the whole $105 million deal is not the whole story. But the 3-year, $25 million deal with a chance to earn, it makes me like Geno a little bit more too, that he's willing to bet on himself, that I can do those same kind of numbers. And I was just pulling up his numbers, and almost 70% completion percentage. The next closest was 68.3, which is Joe Burrow. So I mean, that's a really good year. The interceptions, I know Burrow threw more than he did. There was a couple of good, I think Mahomes threw 12. So I mean, if he lives up to these numbers that he put up last year, are you cool with that?
Oh yeah,
that
contract? It was a great year. It was a great year. I think I fall in line with what I sort of presume other GMs might feel, with just an air of skepticism. Like, man, that was I couldn't have been more wrong. I was dead wrong on what he was going to be this year. I was saying they were duct tape. Him and Drew Lock, didn't matter who won. It was going to be, these are placeholders for whether it's a free agent or a rookie, whatever comes in here. So blew expectations out of the water without question. And I think that was true for most people. The other part of it is okay, that was so far out of the ordinary for him. Is that real? Is that fool's gold like we talked about? There are these cautionary tales of guys throughout the history of this league that pop for a year and then capitalize on it, and good for them. And we brought up Blake Bortles, brought up Joe Flacco. We've seen different quarterbacks, to lesser extent. Fitzpatrick had a year, signs a deal. Different guys have done it, and then they sort of regress back to maybe something closer to what they had been. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with Geno, but I think that's what leads to my skepticism. Like, yeah, I'm rooting for him to duplicate what he did last year by all means and exceed it if possible. But if he gives you that or something close, I'm not complaining.